Okay, we're going to go ahead and get started. Once again, good morning. I want to thank everybody for taking the time out of their day to view this intro into Enterprise PDM. My name is Shane Pritchard, and the first thing I'm going to do is just basically send out a poll question. I'm going to launch this now. Go ahead and if you can hear my voice, go and select yes. And I'll wait for everybody's responses. I want to make sure that everybody can hear the audio. Okay, still waiting for a few people to answer the poll question. So if you can hear my voice, go ahead and select yes. If you can't hear it, please let me know, and we can address that before I get started. Okay, so I'm going to assume, looks like that most everyone has voted here, and you can hear my voice, so I'm going to go ahead and get started. Okay, so basically today, this introduction of Enterprise PDM, I'm going to go through a five page PowerPoint really quick, just to kind of give you an overview of this. I'm going to go ahead and close this poll here. Okay, get back to the PowerPoint. I know everybody doesn't like PowerPoints, but I'm just going to go through this fairly quickly, kind of give you an idea of what we're going to go through today or this morning. So first of all, if you look at this PowerPoint, there are a lot of things that SolidWorks has under the umbrella of applications. So you have your design, your SolidWorks, things that you use day to day with the SolidWorks application. You also have simulation. If you want to analyze your products, if you're responsible for maintaining your manuals or setup or anything like that, SolidWorks Composer. The question here today is how do we manage all of these file extensions? And so this is what I'm going to focus on today is using Enterprise PDM. Now this just doesn't involve SolidWorks Applications per se. It can manage any Windows application. So what is PDM? I get this question quite a bit. Product data management, what does it really mean? And there's 4 simple rules with any data management process. This could be manual or it could be automatic. Now, a PDM tool should, or a business should, you should be able to organize the data, securely control the data that you're working with, and be able to find it. If you're working on something, it's very critical to be able to find the information quickly. And the last thing is visibility. Who has access to this controlled release documentation? How do we share that with everybody in our organization? Now, these 4 simple things to look at, pretty easy to manage in one site, but what happens if you have multi-sites or different departments, people that you need to work with? So this is where it comes into play with Enterprise. Here's the capabilities of what we're going to be looking at. First of all, when people hear the term data management, it's not real exciting. It's something that we have to do day to day. But with that, it should be very easy to use. So Enterprise PDM is built inside of SolidWorks. It's also built inside of Windows Explorer. So just stating those 2 things, people will understand quickly that, hey, I know SolidWorks and I know how to use Windows Explorer. It's just an extension of those two systems that we already are in day to day. It's secure, so a lot of companies will choose to use, they have Windows servers with domain credentials. Enterprise can use those. So based on your existing credentials, those can be borrowed. Being able to find information quickly is very important. We spend a lot of time as engineers, designers, or people outside, sales departments, trying to find the information. And what happens when you find it? How do you know if it's the right version? And it should be very simple to find your information. And it shouldn't be based on smart numbering systems or memorizing folder path locations. It should be built on data that you remember, like material or something like that. It is scalable. Enterprise is built on industry standard tools, SQL, and things like that. Windows Explorer, I've already mentioned. So if you start off with 5 users, up to hundreds of users, it's a scalable solution. The workflow, everybody has, whether they know it or not, have some type of workflow to release documents. Now that could be as simple as a manual process where you actually walk papers around to get them signed. That's a workflow. These can be emulated or designed in parallel to what you're already doing, and there's flexible workflows in the system to help automate those tasks. And then the data connectivity, this means that we've got, with Enterprise, you're going to be storing a lot of files, a lot of data. What can we do with that? You can share that with your other Enterprise applications like a PLM system or something that has another database. So let's take a look at the client or the licensing of Enterprise. There's a lot of questions of, okay, what do I get with the system? The SQL is included, and also the floating licenses when you purchase the client are a part of the system. The CAD editor integrates seamlessly with SolidWorks. With every client, you also get something that's very important, eDrawings Professional. So the people that may not be in SolidWorks every day, not have access to eDrawings Professional, when they log into the Vault, they have those tools available. Along with that, full BOM management, and that's something that usually you have to rely on an engineer to export out the bill of material or print a drawing or create a drawing. So a few added steps, and this BOM management is live. Regardless of what the engineer is working on, you can have access to that bill of material. And it runs on Windows 7, both 64 and 32-bit operating systems. We talked about the workflow, and I want to expand on that just a little bit. It's unlimited as far as how many that are required. You're not just going to build one workflow and have the idea that everything's going to pass through and fit in this one workflow. You can have as many as required. And then finally, multi-site replication. What this means is if you have more than one site, the data that truly matters, who's working on something, who has something checked out, what's the state, the metadata, those types of things, what revision is a file currently at. That's very critical. When you're across multi-sites, what happens is that data is automatically propagated to all the sites. When you check something in, you take ownership, that information is live, which is very critical and important to people working on the same designs. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and switch over to SolidWorks, but before I do that, I'm going to go ahead and open up this PowerPoint and just quickly show how do we get things in the Vault. So I'm going to do a save as. And you notice that I'm in just standard Windows Explorer. As soon as I touch the vault view here, okay, notice what happens. This, even though I'm in a save as dialog, folder structure changes. In the view, I have these columns now that have very important information, the state. I'm going to travel down into this folder right here. I have access to the full interface of Enterprise in any save as or open dialog, which is important. So again, I'm not going back and forth between a different system. It's built in. So I'll just save this here. Okay, and so that's just the first step. As soon as you save something in the vault, you notice that it's notified me that there's a new file that's been added to the vault. There's that PowerPoint. It's giving me feedback that I have it checked out. Again, I'm using the user mark and just a little explanation of this person's role. He's an engineer. He's going to be working on some files today, and through the process, he's going to ask for approval on a few things. So first of all, I'm going to work as an engineer, and then later on in the presentation, I'm going to switch hats and be an approver. Okay, so this is in the vault. I can just right-click here and check in. All right, so, and it's letting me know I have this open in another application. Probably makes sense to close this. Okay, and before I do that, you'll notice that when I select this PowerPoint, regardless of what the user has installed on their system, if it's PowerPoint, maybe they don't have PowerPoint. A lot of people don't. Maybe they don't have Office products, but you're going to be able to see the view because there's a built-in viewer with Enterprise as well. So let's check this in. And as soon as I check this in, this is the important part of this. I can put in information, initial check-in. Anything I type in here is searchable. But really what's happening is as soon as I check in, this PowerPoint is now going to be part of the vault, and people can see all the information about it. Okay, so that's how easy it is to check things in. And since it is Windows Explorer, I want to point out that all the functionality that everybody's used to, cut, paste, rename, all those tools are available within the vault view. I'm going to come back to this, but I want to focus a little bit on the SolidWorks side and the integration between Enterprise and SolidWorks. So I have this Matro assembly, Jaws of Life, and I wanted, first of all, change the design, maybe add a harder pin to this. So I'm just going to rotate this a little bit. I think everybody's familiar with this assembly, or at least heard of this. Okay, so I want to point out here that this file is read-only. This is one layer of control, meaning that I can look at assemblies that are inside the vault. I can even manipulate them. However, I'm not going to affect anything that's there, any release documentation, until I put it into a state that I can write to this file. So what-if scenarios or things like that, I can perform. And this ensures that I'm not copying out an extra version of this onto my local hard drive, manipulating it, changing it, and then trying to synchronize it up later on a shared drive. That's what we want to avoid. This allows me to work within the vault the whole entire time. Okay, so this is read-only, and normally most of us don't open things up read-only, because what do you have to do? You have to open it up with write access to make changes. So I'm going to go through this workflow. I want to change this arm, so I can open it up, and it gives me an indication that, and this is standard SolidWorks, that this file is read-only. That's fine. I'm going to use Instant 3D here, and I want to add some integrity to this arm. So I'm going to go ahead and grab this handle and go ahead, and you should be familiar with Instant 3D. I'm going to snap it to 40, and I'm going to pause here for a second and just explain this dialog. What this is telling me is if I'm not familiar with using Enterprise, this is just stating that, hey, look, you're making a change to this particular part, and if you want this change to be part of the system, you want to check it out. And once I become familiar with how this works, I can say, do not show me this again. I'm going to hit OK on this. Notice I'm still read-only. Okay, so I look at it, I can rotate it, I can run it through another simulation if I wanted to. But in reality, when I make a change like this, I want to be able to determine if I change this arm, what is it affecting? Now this is where engineers or designers will stop, maybe close SolidWorks altogether, or they'll keep it open. They'll go to some other method for finding and searching where this part is used. So now there are tools in SolidWorks to do that. However, it tends to search locally. We're searching throughout the whole entire vault. So here's a where used. So when this comes up, part of the integration in SolidWorks, it's built right in. So I don't have to go out in Windows Explorer to perform these operations. Now, when you look at this list, a lot of queries that you will identify or perform, they're static lists, meaning I can just look at it, I can print it. That it's something that it's for reference. The majority of the dialogues, the search tool, this where used report that comes up, it has intelligence built in, meaning that I can interact with this report, meaning I could save this out. Let's say my manager said, hey, Shane, we may be changing this arm. We're going to have a meeting about it here in a half an hour. I can save this out into an Excel spreadsheet, bring that to the meetings, and have information available about this part, where it's used, and we can make a decision right there. Okay, the other part of it is, this is, this example, it's only reporting, or it's only written against the assembly, makes sense, the drawing. Well, what would happen if there were multiple assemblies here, and I needed to go investigate that? Well, right here, I can go ahead and just say, I'm not familiar with this assembly. I can go and navigate to the exact location of the vault and start looking at this assembly. So again, without having to go back and forth, I can start looking at the file, and then once I've determined, okay, it makes sense, I can use this new design in this assembly, I can move forward. Or if it's not going to work, I can make a decision and create a new part number. So from this where used, there's a lot of information right at your fingertips that you have access to. And it should seem very simple to find information, and it is. Okay, so now I'm ready to do something with this. This is where I can, when I select it, notice that the feedback I'm getting is it's equal. There's a little equal sign here, probably a little hard to see on your end. But I'm going to get a lot of cues that notify me as a user that something is different or been updated. I don't have to go and constantly look at a state or look at something else. It's a visual cue. So I'm going to check this out. Okay, so kind of did that quickly, but I had pointed out before this was read-only before, and now it's writable. So I don't have to open and close this arm to gain access to it. I've made a change to it. Now these are capped. I can simply, I'm going to go ahead and pin this down. Before I do that, most of us use dual monitors or more than one. And this is designed, I can peel this away and put this on my other monitor. Okay. That way I can gain access to the whole entire graphics area of SolidWorks. I'm going to pin this down, just make it a little bit easier. And I'm going to go ahead and save this. Now notice I've saved it. Now it's notifying me that this arm is newer. This white arrow pointing up is showing me that it's newer than what's in the vault, which is great. If I'm working with other people, I may need to notify them that this part's changed, so I'll simply check this in. And if this is an important historical milestone of this arm, it may just be something that I will work with throughout the day, checking in at the end of the day. But Enterprise will capture those important versions. Change web thickness. Again, you can put in as much information as you want, because this is what we tend to remember, not the part numbers. Now I'm going to check it in and release ownership of it. I could keep it checked out as well. Okay. And again, there's the, I can save this out. If there are more than one file here listed, I could save that out as an Excel spreadsheet. So change web thickness, check in. Now notice what happens. This is part of the control. It's now read-only. Checked it in, and if somebody else were referencing this arm, they would get an indication that their version doesn't equal the vault, and they can simply right-click and reload, and they're going to see exactly where I'm at. And this is, a good part of the system to help identify those changes and when they happen. So I'm going to switch back to the assembly, recognize that it's changed. Okay. And looking in here, this is the task pane. I can travel through here and look at the parts and the assemblies. Notice that graphically they highlight as well, so I know exactly what I'm looking at. I get a little image here, and I can look at the state that it's in. So I have full visibility of what's going on with the parts and the references here. So it might make sense at this point to go ahead and check out this assembly. Change the arm. The assembly is probably going to need to be revised as well to reflect that, and the drawing. So I'll go ahead and check this out. Now notice there are some things that I have no checkout rights to, and what this is letting me know is that these are protected, they're approved, and I would have to go through an ESCAN process or ECO process or whatever people use to be able to get that in a state that's writable. Okay, so I'm going to go and check out the drawing as well. And now it becomes writable. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and save this just to show that I get the same notification here that it's been updated. And I'm going to go ahead and change this pin. Now I want to change it to a pin that's hardened steel, and I don't know where it's located. I just know the material type. So I can certainly use the search command up here for the file, but I'm going to leverage the the search tool within Enterprise. This is how I get to it, Enterprise PDM search, complete search. So once again, just pointing out, I don't have to travel out of SolidWorks to do this. And if I look at something as simple as pin, okay, hit return, it's a live search, comes up with all of these pins. I can look at previews. Okay, I can interact with the search results. Now, I said something earlier that I'm looking for a specific material. Now, I'm not really sure, this doesn't even have material. I'd have to, open it up and look at it. But I want to refine the search a little bit here. So I'll use the card. Before I do that, let me explain this just quickly. Every extension in Enterprise can have its own unique data card. So we're just looking at the SolidWorks information here, the data card here. And you can see that we can capture properties. It'll show different configurations. There's a field for material. Well, I may want to search for that information. So this is where I can go to the Cards tab, look for part, and I can type right in here 4340, hit return, and it found the only one that meets both the requirements of description of pin and the material here. Okay, so when we look at the data card, this was in the material here. So it's pretty easy to identify the one that's available. You can take it a step further here. I have a static snapshot of this pin. But let's say that I really don't know if it's the correct size. I know it's the correct material. So I can use things like, this is eDrawings Pro, measure. I can go ahead and take measurements of this in the search window. I can see the diameter, I can see the length, and then I can determine, okay, is this the right pin? And I could go back to SolidWorks and do some measurements as well. So you can interact between the search window and SolidWorks. So I've determined, okay, this is the right pin I'm looking for. And I purposely kind of went out of order here because this happens. We're in a hurry, kind of get quick happy. Now I forgot to delete the existing pin that's here. So I can go back to SolidWorks and I'll show you what this looks like. Okay, so there's a pin there that I need to replace. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and just select it, hit delete on my keyboard and delete that. Now I can go back to my search window and I can simply just drag and drop this in here. And there's just mate references here, and I'll tab that in here and just place that part of the assembly. So it's really straightforward, things that you'd expect, just drag and drop from the search window. Okay, so I'll close this out. And I'll come back over to SolidWorks and I'll modify. Notice that I don't have a pin here. I'm going to go ahead and modify this mirror feature to include that. Okay. All right. So now it might make sense to update the drawing. So I could certainly just right-click up here, and if people are familiar with it, I could open the drawing. It would use the path to where this is related. However, I'm going to just use the file open dialog to show that something very similar that I showed earlier, that I can go ahead and use the open dialog. Here's the interface with Enterprise. I can use the tools that we're used to, look at all the drawings, So there's the drawing. Okay. We'll let this open up. This is actually an older version, which is fine. Notice that there's a dangling bill of material as well, balloon here. And if I probably should have went and updated the exploded steps, but that's okay. So I can point this to the correct pin. I can move this around. Just want to ensure that these are set up correctly. I can drag a magnifying line through here to make sure it's 90. That looks good. So the bill of material has been updated. I'm going to go ahead and save this. Okay. So now these are both been updated. And now, at this point, I've finished my design. I've updated the assembly, the drawing. Probably makes sense to attempt to get this approved. Okay. So I can go ahead and check this in. And again, you want to put in as much information as you can. I'm going to check it in here. And now this drawing becomes read-only. Now at this point, I could go through and select to go through the workflow here. Okay, I could go through and submit for approval. So let me just show this really quickly. I'm not going to spend a lot of time in the admin tool, but this just shows you part of the workflow. It's in under editing, which allows engineers to do certain things. So these are the permissions. What I had done is submitted for approval. I'm also notifying individuals that I've set this to be approved. And you see that this is the workflow. And waiting for approval. If I'm a manager, I could send it back. Editing required. If I'm wanting to fast track, I could do a no approval required. And this information can change. The labels are going to show what everyone is used to seeing in their own organization. Okay, so what I'm going to do is show I can go right to the vault, and it'll have this highlighted. You know, once again, I'm logged in as an engineer, and I need to send this out to be approved. So I can come up here. There's a couple ways to do it. I can modify, change state, submit for approval, or I could simply just right-click on the drawing, change state, submit for approval. Works the same way. Okay. I have a little bit of latency here on my end. I'll wait for this. Okay. All right, so the transition for approval here, you can see that I have a comment field here. I could put in Please approve. Hit OK. And what I wanted to point out is if we go back to this workflow, I have certain things happening, like in this case, submit for approval. Certain tasks can be triggered. So if you're responsible for doing a design check, in this example, it can be set and be automatically triggered during the transition. Things like creating PDFs, saving out different file formats. Something very popular is creating PDFs of files and putting them in a specific folder. Things like that. But the thing to point out is it happens in the appropriate transition. So it's not somebody doing it manually after and then going through this manual check and balance. So I'll hit cancel here. Okay. So now these are waiting for approval, and I can log out as Mark, and I can log in as somebody that does the approving, a manager. You notice that I automatically receive a notification. So things that are very important. Neil, I need you to look at this assembly. Comes up with a notification. And again, just like the search and the where used, there's links that are important. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and close this out and minimize SolidWorks just to show that maybe I'm looking at this, or maybe it's a multi-site. There's a lot of things that I need to approve. Looking at these one at a time might be tedious, but you can. But there's important links to point out. I can look at the history right here within this notification. So this historically is capturing everything that's happening, when, where. Also, I can look at the properties. So the data card, I don't even have Windows Explorer open at this point. But I can see the data that's important to me. The state change information. And the last thing here I'll show is that I'm not really concerned location in the vault, because I can just select the link and it'll take me right to the specific folder structure and highlight the file that I'm going to be reviewing. Well, let's say that I have many files that are waiting for my approval. This is where I'm going to use the search again. Before I had shown this in SolidWorks, this time I'm going to show this in Windows Explorer, where I can simply say I want to look in the whole vault, and I want to look through the workflow. I want to find everything waiting my approval, and hit go. Okay. So this is a live search. I could save this as a favorite if this is something I'm doing on a daily basis. I can also create a search and share that with all of the users in my organization. So here's all the files, and I can look at the data card. I can look at everything here, which makes sense. And when I'm satisfied, I've reviewed them. Okay, I can either shift, control select, I can grab everything, in this case, and right click, change state, and I have some options here. If I find a file that does, I found something that needs to be changed, I can select edit required, and this will take it back to the state of under editing. And it would notify the person that submitted it that, hey, this needs to be changed. Or I can pass the approval. Okay. All right. So let's look at this for a second and add a comment. Approved. Okay. I can also notify dynamically other people. somebody's on vacation and that person's normally not notified, I can select that person. And the other thing to point out is for me to pass this approval, it requires my domain password to move it along. So nobody should have your credentials. So this qualifies for an electronic signature, and mine's really secure. It's blank. So I'll go ahead and approve that. Okay, so these are approved, and to get back into Windows Explorer, the Enterprise Vault view is just toggling the search. Okay, so I'm going to go back to SolidWorks here and talk about viewing files in different versions, and manually keeping, archiving versions of files becomes too tedious for people. They don't do it, or they attempt to do it and they don't do it well because they've got other work to do. And this is where Enterprise just does it for you automatically. So we talked about this part, right? Well, let's say that I wanted to, somebody says, hey, Shane, this is now approved. What was the first version? What does it look like? And, I'd have to go manually try to find this, or rely on a PDF or a print or some static snapshot of it. With Enterprise, it captures all that important information. So I could go through, this is read-only still, not the owner of it. I can go back in time, and it's showing me the first version. You can see this is deeper. Maybe a few other things have changed. I get an indication this is not the latest version. I can go back and look, okay, well, this has changed web thickness. Okay, so this is where we left off here. Okay, so visually I can see, okay, this is different. But what happens when it's hard to identify if it's an organic shape or you're doing consumer product design, and it's really hard to just visually find the differences? And if you've used this before, I'm going to compare features here, or documents, it doesn't matter. With Enterprise, I can select a file that's in the vault, select it within Enterprise, and this method allows me to say, well, I want to look at the latest version, okay, and against how it was created. I'm going to check the geometry, run the comparison. Now I'm bringing this up because if you've done this without a tool like Enterprise, then it becomes one of these things where you have to rename the file, and you have to have two separately different versions, and they're not the latest version. So this does it within the vault, leveraging the versions that are inside of the system. So you can see here, it's telling me graphically exactly what's changed. I can save this out and really identify what's changed. So that's the compare. Okay, so I'm going to go back over to this view and talk about the assemblies. And maybe I'm not a CAD user, and I want to look at there's tabs, contains. I can see everything that's here. Again, here's the where used. I can also look at the bill of material. This allows me to see everything that is made up this assembly. I don't have to go and talk to the engineer and say, hey, I need the latest bill of material. I can also look at different versions of the bill of material. If you save out a bill of material, you can add things like glue or paint or something like that, or you can save this out for somebody to order off of. early on in the process. And also you can compare. Okay, so I can compare. Now you're not going to be able to see this. Let me expand this a little bit or change it. So you can see that something new, modified, deleted. It's kind of like doing that overlay. It'll tell you automatically what has changed. So there's a comparison tool in here as well. Okay. So that's a quick overview of Enterprise PDM. And I just want to, kind of reiterate some of the highlights. That is, it's really easy to use. I think that you guys identified that within side of Windows Explorer or SolidWorks, it's right-clicking. It's things that we're used to doing. The SolidWorks integration it's seamless. So you can search, do where used, contribute to the workflow without having to enter any type of other application. And there's control. It's very clear that when I'm working on files, they're controlled. I'm not accidentally working on the wrong version. And again, I've kind of mentioned this several times. As an engineer, a lot of you can probably relate. Searching can be frustrating. With Enterprise, it's very easy to find the data you're looking for without having to memorize location or part numbers or things like that. And multi-site. As soon as you check something in, that information is propagated to everyone live. And that's very important. You need to know who has something checked out. It's depending on if they're on the East Coast, West Coast, that's going to show up automatically. And finally, it's secure. It's your data. Engineering data is very important, and you want to make sure that it's secure. And finally, I focused on SolidWorks and managing SolidWorks files, but I have some Word files in here, a PowerPoint. This is an enterprise-wide application, so people that are doing machining, they can contribute their information, or tech publishing, or other departments can manage their files easily with Enterprise. All right. So I want to thank everybody for showing up today and sitting in. If you have any questions, I'm going to keep this presentation up for a few minutes, and I'll try to answer those as quickly as I can. Thank you.